Misha here, and I just sold my rarest World War II firearm. No, not this one. In fact, this gun is downright common, both in terms of original production numbers and units available in America compared to what I did just sell. And it was a tough one. My Japanese Terra paratrooper takedown rifle. But no, not even this one. This Terra rifle, this takedown paratrooper here. And most folks, when they see it, they can tell it's a takedown, but they can also tell something's similar but not quite right. That's actually how I kind of ended up with it. This is my Type 0, sometimes called the Type 100. It's a pre-production or even prototype, and I actually found it locally. Believe it or not, I told the story years ago. I've already shown this in videos before, but it's not only up for sale, it's actually sold and paid for, and I'm about to ship it out, so I figured before I do, let's do one more video with it, because I will very, very, very likely never own another one in my life, because, well, there are definitely double digits, maybe even single digits here in America today, because in World War II they just built a few hundred of these. So we'll just talk about it a bit, and why it came to be, why Japan needed a takedown paratrooper gun, and why they were actually able to get this into production, sort of, is that Type 2 you just looked at. And of course the whole basis. If you like Japanese small arms or just historical guns, like, share, subscribe, check out some of past videos, and like to help support the channel, there's always Patreon or Super Thanks. I'm holding a Type 94. Recently did a pretty lengthy video looking at these, and I brought it out because this is what Japanese paratroopers had originally. With the operations in the Second Sino-Japanese War, and of course the Pacific coming, not only the Japanese Army, but the Japanese Navy, specifically the Special Landing Forces Division, their take on Marines, had jump divisions, kind of going off what Germany was doing. And they did actually have some operations early on. For example, the Navy was the first to have a full-fledged combat jump in January of 1942. The Army would follow that year. But in the beginning, this is what they jumped with. A pistol, typically a Type 94, and a handful of grenades. 3, 4, whatever they could carry. Their weapons, be it rifles, machine guns, they would drop in a separate case along with the ammo. Can you see the problem? Yeah. They wanted to be able to drop their guys in with better armament. And of course, in America, we ended up with the M1A1 carbine. Some guys also jumped in with the disassembled M1 Garand. The Germans, of course, had the FG-42, used around the same time. But most nations didn't really do it. But Japan was already underway as early as 1940, right as this rifle was going into production. Here we have the Type 99 and its new 7.7mm cartridge. This is a pretty good early example. Top cover, dust cover, monopod, AA sights, spring-loaded cleaning rod. Just a good, honest, earlier production. And, originally they were going to do a long rifle, roughly 30 inches, 31, and a carbine, roughly 18, 19 inches. But they settled on a short rifle, just under a 26-inch barrel, and that's what everyone was going to make. So the long rifles are pretty rare. And this is exactly where they started to make a paratrooper rifle. And there were two competing ideas. A folding stock gun, kind of more similar to what we'd see in modern day, or a takedown gun, a very traditional thing. You see lots of takedown shotguns, even on the civilian market. Well, they were going to do a takedown rifle. Again, with some inspiration from Europe and what was going over there. And in the beginning, technically, it's a different thing, but in spirit, they just sawed the gun in half into 2 equal parts and said, is that good enough? How are we going to connect them back again? I guess they didn't have enough duct tape or Bondo or super glue, right? Baling wire. Boy, that'd be a thing. An air socket held together with baling wire. Well, instead of that, they put this big hexagonal, octagonal shaped block on in here. Not exactly the most elegant. Definitely adds some weight here. And the kind of brainstorming and original R&D was done at the Armory's research lab. The Navy was also, of course, interested and involved. And it was also done at Nagoya, a Toyomatsu factory that ended up building these. So those are the kind of interested parties. And in 1940, this pattern was at least showed off, although it seems like they were actually not produced till a little bit later. And it would have the features of a standard 99, the AA sights. From what I understand, this one would have had a monopod. It is missing it, but hard to say. It does have the cleaning rod. It does have the top cover. The top cover is unnumbered for what it's worth. Standard sling mounts. Yeah, it's very standard. 7.7 mil. All that stuff. Still has a barrel, 25 inches and some change. So, standard length rifle. That's the idea. This can drop in with the soldiers, Navy or Army, and they can go immediately into combat. And in theory, it could work very quickly. And of course, that gets to the whole takedown part of this gun with this latch right here. This has Cosmoline in it, so I've learned over the years to just kind of be easy with it. This rotates out. It's an interrupted thread, as you see here. And set this down carefully. Famous last words, I know. You can see inside the receiver there. And this block here. Pull it back, you can see the kind of bottom part of the marking. What they did is, if you feel up in here, they basically took a receiver and they lobbed it off right in front where the bolt locks in. In my original video I posted a few years ago, someone said it's kind of a myth that they just took them off the production line. They're heavily modified, but really they are. Now, were they ever complete rifles, or were they just taking maybe already serialized receivers and then modifying them? That I don't know. But they basically cut the front half off a receiver and grafted on this block, and the fact that there's covered up markings here is evidence that this receiver had markings before the mods ever took place. You can see that little plunger here. It should spring forward, and it does, but again, there's Cosmoline in there, so it's pretty weak now. Not the only thing weak about this design, but that's what basically holds it in, that nubbin, and it's retained with the spring. And then this just threads into it. Notice that the told you there's Cosmoline. The bolt doesn't lock into an extension, not like the later Naval Special. But when you put them side by side, this is the length, and that meant it could just be on their leg and not be an issue. And there was, one other concern they had, one other sticky yaddy bit. This cocking handle, charging handle here. It's removable too, and this is actually how I first ID'd this gun. Told you, I found this locally. Well, a friend did. He was over at someone's place and looking at various guns, and he had a number of other guns, and he had a normal Type 2. And he looked at this, and he could tell it was real similar, but different. And this is what I asked him. I said, does the handle unscrew like such? And he said, yes, it does. and I knew right there what we had. Now, it normally has more of a ratcheting sound to it. There's teeth in there, but again, Cosmoline's kind of gooped it up. Not to mention the springs were just kind of weak over time. Kind of neat, too. There's a little bit of patterning, knurling, so you can dog it down tight. So the idea was you don't have this sticking out, big bulbous thing, a couple of inches. So everything can be nice and flat. Are you seeing the problem with this? It's one of those concepts that sounds good. It really does. The whole point of this latch system is you can do this quick. In theory. Again, that just slots in about a quarter turn. Now, normally that would spring down and then spring back up. Just gotta latch it on this one. And I like to grab this one by the barrel when I unscrew it because the wood's kind of shrunk over time. That's Japanese wood. And then there it is. It's together. It's very quick. And then you just need to screw your bolt knob in. Now, I guess in a pinch, if you had to, you could use a bullet tip to get there. But really, if you lost this, you'd be kind of screwed. Because you need it. Again, Cosmoline making this real sticky. You can tell it's not one I ever plan to fire. So the theory's good. For what it's worth, numbers match on the receiver, the firing pin, the safety, and while they would normally be on the bolt here, that's kind of covered up by the modification of the screw-up bolt, but it is matching on the extractor part of the bolt, which is fixed in place. Oddly, on this one, the bayonet lug does not match. I don't know if it was just two guns put together, probably, or maybe when they were doing these at the factory, because they were prototypes, really. They just weren't paying close attention, because I do still assert that these were at least half-complete guns that were taken off the line, because we do kind of find them in two batches. 30,000s range and 50,000s range. And common collector lore is, to take it for what exactly that's worth, the 30,000s were Navy marked and have a little anchor, and the 50,000s, like this one, were Army marked. So we kind of know the ranges that they were in, but not all the guns in there were, because while we don't know how many were made for both branches, the number 500 is quoted by the factory in some testimony. The records are officially lost, but 500 or less were ever made. And of course, a lot of them, I'm sure, were lost to testing and sampling, and it's doubtful that these ever saw real combat, even though they were given to troops for evaluation. And they did like how quick it was to get ready, and the fact that it was a full-length gun, full sight radius, and fired the full-power cartridge. So this was the Type 0, Type 100. This was one option. What about the folding stock? Well, that would become known, at least on certain levels, as the Type 1. Not Type I, that's the Carcano type gun, Type 1. And you always think of the Type 1s as the Navy. And they started with this gun here. A Type 38 Arisaka carbine, 19-inch barrel, give or take. Still in the original 6.5. Now keep in mind, they're still making, at least at certain factories, 6.5 Type 38s. So I do think these were pretty much taken off the line, purpose built, but I don't think they'd used older guns. But they basically took this, and right behind here, they lobbed it off. And they basically went to the nearest door, took the hinge off the door, and made a folding stock. Very compact. All you had to do was pull your stock out. So that was good. And it was pretty straightforward. I mean, just a hinge and a little bit of modification. And you didn't have an action breaking into at the chamber, so it was going to be stronger. And it's firing the 6.5, a little weaker round anyway, less oomph to go through. I don't believe the Navy ever shared these with the Army. At least records don't show it. Some say they made 500 of the Type 1s. Some say 300. Take it for what you will. It's lost to time. Just as the Type 0 had its issues, though, the Type 1 did. For one, the hinge wasn't super strong. For another, yeah, you're saving length, but then you fold it over on the side, so you've got that side bulk. And for a third, 7.7 is the new hotness in 1940, 1941. By the way, these are named after the 2600 and 2601 years in the traditional Japanese calendar. Anyway, the Navy, the Special Landing Forces, didn't want the 6.5 cartridge, certainly not out of a short barrel. It felt like it was going backwards. It felt like exactly what it was, an ad hoc thing. So it never went much of anywhere. Again, I don't believe the Type 1s ever saw combat. And I've never owned one because you have to look out for fakes or reproductions, replicas, whatever you want to call them. Because it's just adding a hinge. And there was a guy down in Florida years ago who was doing really good replicas. And I don't normally go for prototypes or even pre-production guns. I like standard infantry guns. So why did I get that Type 0? You kidding? Why wouldn't I? Just because as a general rule, I don't do prototypes and little production things. It was local. I knew what it was, and I wanted to study it. According to the guy that I got it from, he got it from the vet who brought it back from the war. That's just hearsay. Take it for what you will, but that's just kind of how the old way would go. Now, he would have been a young man in the 1950s. He was probably born around 1945, 46, maybe late 40s. So, you know, he said he got it in the late 50s, early 60s from the guy when he was 12, 13. You know, basically he said that he caught his eye and he mowed lawns and did other chores to save up to get it from the guy and had it ever since. So take it for what you will. I just thought, what are the odds of me finding one of these in America? Because how they even made it over here is a bit of a mystery. Same with the Type 1s. Thing is, with these, it'd be a lot harder to fake it because of this whole block and grafting onto the receiver and, yeah, interrupted threads. The Type 1, pretty easy to copy, fake. This one, not so much. And aside from the monopod, it's more or less complete and matching, all except that one number. I'm not even sure if that would have been matching or not from the factory. Okay, so they test this starting in 1941-42. And they like the takedown system, but it's just too weak. And that's where work begins turning this Type 0 into the Type 2. And back out with the Type 2, the Tira rifle. You got the same kind of basic block. Notice it doesn't have this big piece up here. And to be fair, if the Type 0 was put into full production, I'm sure they would have made a purpose-built receiver, but yeah. But they changed it to a wedge system. This does screw. It always kind of reminds me of a grenade pin. This one's a little sticky. There we go. Just got to unscrew it a few turns. And then you pull out this wedge. Now this wedge is captive. And then it just pulls straight out. You can see under the barrel where the wedge goes. You can also see the barrel goes further back into the receiver now. You notice I'm being very careful too. It's just plain Jane in here, and here's our wedge. This wedge is pretty neat. It's a big chunk. Easier to machine. Almost as quick to put into action. And probably if you train with it, just as quick. Everything else is the same. Now, what about the handle? Actually, as much as we kind of think that'd be easy to lose, and it turns out it was, they actually kept the removable cocking handle on the wedge design throughout most of 1942, at least for a little while. They like that feature. Heck, they even tried a fixed folding bayonet, kind of inspired by the Type 44 cavalry carbine. So they played around with the design throughout that year. And the one we know, notice the nubbin's just fixed here on this one. The one we know and love here was tested in October. A few notes were sent back to Nagoya. Then they retested it in the spring of 43, and that's when it was adopted as the Type 2 takedown, Type 2 paratrooper, the Tira rifle, and ordered into immediate production. These will only ever be built at Nagoya's Torimatsu facility. Again, to put it back together. Wrap her in there. Make sure your wedge is out enough. Put your wedge in, and it's kind of a self-tensioning wedge there. Again, one of my threads is a little weird on this one. Like I said, it just kind of tensions itself in. Much tighter fit. And there we go. No bolt handle. You just gotta kind of deal with it up. Otherwise, it's a standard 99, at least of 1943. That's why it still has the AA sights. But by this point, even the standard production model loses the monopod, so it never had it. It still has the full-length spring-loaded cleaning rod, protected sights, nice groove stock, top cover, all serial match parts, you know, metal butt plate. It's ready to go. And these were, at least, you know, nominally combat capable. Are they as strong as a standard gun? Well, no, they're held together with a wedge. But, generally speaking, they're fine. As for the bayonet, mostly these just appeared with the Type 30 bayonet, but they did have a shortened Type 2 bayonet. It was detachable. That was sometimes issued with these. Did they ever see combat? Actually, yeah, they did. Once. Well, once we can verify. At Leyte Gulf, well, after, you know, that was in October, but on the airfield there in December, the Japanese Army sent their paratroopers, what they called their Raider divisions, at least some of them, one of them was still over in China, and they wanted to disrupt air traffic and maybe capture or at least harass the Allies at the airfields. They thought this would hamper operations after the rather disastrous naval battle. And they weren't wrong. If they were able to pull it off, you know, disrupting the airfields would have done the trick. Fortunately for us, and not for them, it didn't really go anywhere. And there were infantry supporting them too. This was just, you know, part of the assault division. And so most of the ones here, if you had to say how they got captured, they weren't just captured on the home islands after the war. Maybe were captured on the Leyte at the time. That was really it, though. I don't believe the Navy ever really used them, at least in a massive operation, if they even ended up with some. Just like with the Type 2 tank, they had a little aquatic tank, little float tank. By the time it was ready to go, they didn't need it either. You know, in 41, you know, 40, they could have used some stuff, but by 43, 44, it was a defensive war. Nagoya would keep turning these out through at least 44. They're pretty much all the same, although some of the later production, the last few thousand, get rid of the AA sights and kind of go to a semi-last-ditch or at least transitional look. How many were made of this? Well, used to we'd say 21 to 24,000. I've seen more recent estimates of 19 to 21,000. Take it for what you will. I feel like I've seen a serial number over 21,000, but you never know. I don't know how sequential they were or where they started. I think I had once it was 22 something, but either way, under 25,000, let's say that. More than 19, under 25. So compared to the standard 99, tiny fraction. But compared to the Type 0 or Type 1, oh yeah, they made tons more of them. And this one I actually got thanks to a friend. Thanks, Bill, I hadn't forgotten. It is matching. They actually have assembly numbers here, plus serial numbers, and it's all there correct. Good, nice and tight gun. It's probably shootable. I am not going to, but you probably could. And it's really cool because you just don't see many paratrooper bolt-action guns. The only one that comes to mind is the French MAS-36 CR-39, which, by the way, I've done a video on. I've even actually shot it. Check it out on the channel. Why am I selling the Type 0? Look, honestly, the answer is it's my business and not yours. But people ask, so I'm just going to hit it off with the head. Now, the Type 2, I can say, even though it was a small production, you know, it was in service. It did even see a major battle in 1944, and it's just cool. I still would have not been able to pick that one up if it hadn't been for the help of a friend. This one, I found it, I wanted to study it, but I think I knew in the back of my head, eventually it would be one that would go, because while it's cool, it doesn't exactly fit my collection, and I don't have any other advanced prototypes, like, say, a Type 1 or a Type 5 or any of that stuff. There's a guy out there that does do that. It's a more advanced collector that will hopefully enjoy this more. Like I said, it is sold already. It's going to a new home. About to box it up. So I hope he does enjoy it. He seemed tickled with it. I hope he does get it and enjoy it. I've enjoyed having it these last roughly 5.5 years. It's been a fun thing to study. I never thought I would own one at all. So to have had it for half a decade and enjoyed it is cool. But I know I'll never own one again. At least I don't see how I would. Not unless this one comes back to me somehow in a weird way. But, yeah, I feel fortunate. But needs must. There's more important things. Family, life. You know how that goes. Can't keep everything. Yeah. But it always takes me a long time to sell Japanese guns. Like, I really like my Japanese collection. Whenever I sell a Japanese piece, even kind of a mundane one, I really have to think on it. It took me about a year to convince myself to sell this one. It was on the chopping block last year when I was doing the cabin stuff to get a well. Instead of doing this, I sold one of my 2 remaining Valmets. Now I'm down to 1 Valmet. But now something else came up about a year later, and I'm cool with it. But I had to sleep on it a good long while. I'm like that. When I'm not ready to sell, I'm not ready to sell. But once I get my headspace there, 9 times out of 10, no regrets. And I don't have any regrets about this. I hope the guy who gets it doesn't either. I really do. I want, because, you know, the collector circle is pretty small, and I want everyone to be happy. And it is cool. It's not, is it perfect? No. But most of them you find, if they are complete, are missing the handle. This one has it. It's pretty neato. Has a top cover too. I can't swear this one came with it because there's no number on it at all, but it fits really well. Looks right. You know, it's a 99 top cover, not a 38. I don't know how the bore is because it's soaked in Cosmoline. The guy I got it from, we live in Arkansas. It's very humid. He had a basement. I'm actually very thankful that he Cosmoed up his guns. So what do you think? I think it's in good shape for what it is, you know. Little roughage here and there, honest wear and tear. Definitely could tell it hasn't been reblued, but considering how this, I wish I had the story of how this got here. But this was my last chance to feature it in a video for posterity. So even though I mostly repeated myself, there you go. You ever had to sell a gun like that before? How do you feel about it? I had a friend once that ended up with a gas trap in $1,000, and he was in it good. He ended up in it like $1,000 through a long twist of fates. And I know he ached about selling it, but he wasn't an advanced grand collector, and he ended up trading it for a couple of guns that he was more into. One of them was Swiss. That's sometimes what we have to do, guys. Anyway, hope everyone's having a good start to their autumn. If you could help support the channel, please check out Patreon, or you can do a super thanks here on YouTube. Or, you know, just like, share, subscribe, and comment your opinions down below. One more look at the standard 99. You know, even with the monopod and top cover on, this is noticeably lighter. The takedown guns, because of that block, even on the Type 2, it adds significant weight. They all have chrome line bores, though. I love Japanese guns. And the funny thing is, I got into them years ago because people weren't clamoring for them. Everyone wanted German. That's cool. No one was really looking at Carcanos and Arisakas. Now, I like Carcanos, but I kind of found that Arisakas were my niche. And what I think is really cool is most of them you find in America are legitimate vet bringbacks, or at least war trophy bringbacks. And so they've all got a story of some type, even if it's just, hey, the soldier went into the depot or the factory and opened up a crate and handed them to some of his buddies. You know, some of them are battlefield pickups, most of them aren't, but it's a lot more interesting than PW Arms or Century Arms imported them. Plus, speaking of, most Japanese guns you find do not have import marks. Of course, there are a handful out there that came out of East Asia, and boy howdy, they can be ratty. You'll know them if you see them, says the blind guy. And ending with them lined up together. Again, the front end's all the same. The real difference is this chunk right here on the receiver. That versus that. bolt handle's a pretty obvious giveaway. And again, your paratroopers should all be Nagoya marked. If they are not, something's a little funky. Appreciate you tuning in for a Japanese video. I know they're a bit of a niche item, but they're a lot of fun, guys. They really are. With that, this is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.